Honorable former Chief Minister of Delhi, ARVIND KEJRIWAL ji, Honorable former Deputy CM of Delhi, Manish Sisodia ji, Honorable Chief Minister of Delhi, Atishi ji, and Honorable former Health Minister of Delhi, Satyendra Jain ji, all the senior leaders from Aam Aadmi Party, lot of my friends, colleagues, many senior editors and journalists in the world of media, ladies and gentlemen. I am very, very grateful to see so many of you today on a Sunday evening on this very special occasion, which is the launch of my first book. After writing this just one book, I can tell you one thing. You need a really good reason to write a book. As good as the feeling is to unveil the book or hold the book in your hands, the process of writing it is a pretty painful one, I must tell you. And if you don't do the job well, the process of reading it also ends up being very painful. So you want to avoid that. So I wanted to share with you today, in the few minutes that I have, as to why did I feel so strongly that the story of Delhi model had to be told, and why I feel that this story is one of the most important stories in India today. In February 2015, just as the entire nation stood in awe when the Aam Aadmi Party came to power with a historic mandate of 67 out of 70 seats, I was one of those millions who was watching the events unfold in television and feeling inspired. The AAP came to power not because it figured out some magical vote factions or vote bank coalitions, which is what politics has usually become in India. But it came to power because of a wide-eyed promise of transformation that people across castes and classes in Delhi believed in. And that was Vyavastha Parivartan. Arvind ji named the entire appeal or the promise of AAP as Vyavastha Parivartan, which is kind of a wholesale retooling of the government machinery itself. All of you will agree that this was once in a generation moment where Delhi's Aam Aadmi rose together to reject all the establishment parties for their failure to address the issues that affected their daily lives: crumbling government schools, overcrowded and unreliable healthcare system, long power cuts, constantly rising electricity and water bills, and ever-rising pollution. Yes, we are talking about the national capital in 2015 and not some remote state in India. So the first reason why I wrote this book is to record what happened to that promise of Vyavastha Parivartan that we started out with in 2015. I genuinely feel that while AAP's politics is discussed endlessly in primetime debates every day, unfortunately, I have also been part of that, its track record in governance remains a black box for most, and especially for those who are outside of Delhi. I was amongst the few fortunate enough to have witnessed or had a ringside view of this promise being translated into reality within the Delhi government for 8 of these last 10 years. And I've always felt that it is a far, far more exciting story than AAP's daily political battles. Let me give you a sense of what I mean. Imagine asking these 5 questions. Can government schools in India consistently perform better than private schools? Is it even conceivable that students will drop out of private schools to stand in queue for admission to government schools? Can a public healthcare system in India provide free and quality healthcare for every citizen for every ailment from primary to tertiary level, irrespective of the cost? Can free and 24/7 electricity be available to every household? And can we have inflation levels in India which are lower than developed nations? The response to these questions in Delhi in 2015, or for that matter in any other part of India even in 2024, will invariably be impossible. ये नहीं हो सकता. This cannot happen in India, at least हमारे जीवन में तो नहीं हो सकता. The story of the Delhi model is the story of how all these and many more promises were turned into reality within a decade, setting new benchmarks in governance. If you don't believe me, sample these. Delhi's government schools have consistently outperformed private schools in class 12 board results for the last decade, not for 1 year, for the last decade. In 2024, our government schools registered 97% board results as against 97% board results as against 94 in private schools. In the last decade, Delhi government set up a chain of 55 Ambedkar schools of specialized excellence. In 2024, these schools received over 1,44,000 applications for just 6,000 seats. A selection rate of 4% in a government school system in India. This is less than the Yale University, it is less than MIT, and it is comparable to what Harvard University's acceptance rate is. 70% of students from these Ambedkar schools who appeared in IIT JEE examinations this year cleared JEE mains. 70% in a government school system. Delhi today is the only state across India that has actually reduced its power tariffs over the past decade. No state has managed to do this, and I'm talking about actual power tariffs without the subsidy. Delhi has managed to reduce it over the last decade. Today, the average Delhi consumer pays 985 rupees for 400 units of consumption, whereas in Mumbai, they pay 4,463. That is 4.5 times higher. As of April 2024, Delhi had the lowest inflation across India at 2.2%. Compared to the average of 4.8% for India, Delhi's inflation in this month was lower than US, UK, Japan, France, and Germany. What I have attempted to do in this book is to tell a factual and a policy-based analysis of all the reforms undertaken, or the majority of the reforms undertaken in the Delhi model in 6 key sectors: education, health, air pollution, transport, electricity, and water. And how have these reforms set new benchmarks in governance, even though, and I admit it at various parts of the book, that even though much still remains to be done. I've also drawn an ambitious roadmap for national reform in each of these key sectors, leveraging the principles and the lessons that we have learned in Delhi in the past decade. But there is another important reason that drove me to write the book, and that is the dangerous path that India is going down. I'm sure for as long as each of you remember, India has been amongst the worst performers in United Nations Human Development Index, which gives us an overall measure of the well-being of our people. In the last 10 years alone, India's ranking on HDI has dropped from 130th to 134th. India today ranks 179 out of 189 countries in terms of its public health spending. We are perhaps the only country in the world that has reduced its health spending after the devastating COVID-19 pandemic. Every other country is investing more in its healthcare. We are reducing it. So ask the question for yourself: how can we ever become a developed nation without having a vision of providing world-class education and health to all our citizens? We may have become the 5th largest economy in the world, but what does it really mean to an average Indian? For the average Indian, what matters is the per capita income. And on that front, India has stagnated at 160th rank for the past 2 decades. For the past 2 decades, an average Indian's life seems to have stagnated. The work of the famous French economist Thomas Piketty shows that only the affluent, or the top 10%, have prospered in India in the last 2 to 3 decades. For the first time in our history, and I'm talking about data from 2022-23, for the first time in our history, India is today more unequal than it was under British rule. For the first time, India is today more unequal than all the G20 nations of the world, including the United States. And all of this is because we have stuck to a failed trickle-down theory of growth for the past 3 decades. And I'm talking about both the UPA regimes and the NDA regime. This theory, the trickle-down theory of growth, doesn't believe in investing in health or education or offering better quality of life to the Aam Aadmi, to those in the middle or the lower classes. It instead believes that giving huge tax cuts and incentives to the corporates is the surest recipe for a nation's growth. Gujarat is the poster child of this failed theory. And I have an entire chapter in this book dedicated to talking about Gujarat versus Delhi model. This is where I feel that Delhi model stands out as a distinctly new approach to development that India has never seen before. At its core, what is the Delhi model? The Delhi model prioritizes investments in human capital development and better service delivery for all citizens, not just for a class of citizens, while ensuring a social security net for the most vulnerable. After nearly a decade of Delhi model, Delhi today ranks #1 amongst all Indian states in Human Development Index, has the highest minimum wage in India, has the lowest inflation in India, and has amongst the lowest unemployment rates across the country. So while many economists, including Amartya Sen and John Drez, have pointed out serious issues with the Gujarat model and India's current development trajectory, no Indian state has staked its claim to offer a better alternative that delivers resilient economic performance while improving the quality of life for all its people. As I argue in this book, the singular achievement of the Delhi model could be that it has filled this national vacuum. Before I finish, I wanted to thank all those without whom this book would have never seen the light of the day. I could write this insider account of the Delhi model only because I was part of a brilliant team led by Delhi's visionary former Chief Minister ARVIND KEJRIWAL ji. I will always remain grateful to you, sir, and Manish ji, for giving me the opportunity to work in a leadership role in Delhi government all these years and for making me a part of this incredible journey. Much of this book was written in the last 1 year when Arvind ji, Manish ji, and Satinder ji were jailed in a fake case in an attempt to finish off the Aam Aadmi Party. I must say that this only strengthened my resolve to tell the story of the making of the Delhi model as it needed to be told and to tell it well. I also thank all those who have been associated with and have contributed to the making of the Delhi model. The Delhi model is the collective work of hundreds and hundreds of individuals, right from our thousands of volunteers who are part of the SMC committees, to many others who have worked at Sachivalay, to many ministers, to many MLAs. Everyone has contributed their part to the making of Delhi model. I hope I live up to your expectations to have done the job of chronicling the story well. For most of us associated with the AAP, we know how important a role our spouses play. We have seen how families of Arvind ji, Manish ji, and Jain Saab stood steadfast in their support when they were targeted with the worst kind of political vendetta that I believe any political party has seen. For those of us on the outside, these last 2 years were also very difficult. And if not for my wife, Padma Priya, who sometimes believed more than me that this book needed to be written and I was the one to write it, I don't think this book would have seen the light of the day. Thank you, Priya. Where is Priya? Priya is there. And finally, I thank the entire team at Penguin and especially my editor, Radhika Marwa. Thank you, Radhika, for doing such an excellent job of publishing this book in a very tight timeline. I also have an announcement to make before I end. The Hindi version of this book is at a very advanced stage. I have the editor from Penguin Hindi's team over here, Sanjeev ji, and it should be coming out sometime next month. Thank you very, very much.